I'm still not in the Blomkamp.
Carve the author's name into my inner thigh kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a slower reader.
It's not going to get any better than that.
You're talking about objective memory versus subjective memory.
The punchline doesn't have the same gravity.
It's just delightful and comforting.
He's not Zima-proof.
A nerd burger in Silicon Valley.
The real surprise twist ending is that they still have Zima that far flung into the future.
He got his superpowers from Zima.
And that would be a lens of hatred.
I'm real.
The pool was filled with Zima.
Broadcasting live from outside the power band, this is The Blah. In this episode, everybody dies. I'm your host, the Wolverine, along with the intrepid Jar Heego.
Hey, everybody.
And the always ready to go C-Lab Forever.
What's up?
Folks, this week on the podcast, we're going to be talking about, well, last week I had hinted that we were going to be talking about crappy animated shorts, but in fact, we're not. We're going to be talking about some really great sci-fi shorts, and I'm going to throw it right over to Algorithm to start off the show. Go.
Yeah, just wanted to talk briefly about how we can structure the show so that it doesn't spoil anything for anyone that hasn't seen any of the stuff we talk about. Basically, I'll make it so that there are chapter markers with each of the titles of each of the 7 things we're talking about, and then I'll also have some timestamps in the show notes. So if your podcast player doesn't support chapters, then you can just go to the time marker that's listed in the show notes.
Very nice. I would just like to say that your rattling off of that list was very sort of Blofeld from James Bond.
Yeah?
I've constructed a complex set of clues that each of you will have to follow to find each short in the list.
Is there like a laser pointed at your balls that you're trying to like get my evil plan out?
Yeah, exactly. That's how I heard it anyway. Okay, so folks, we're going to be talking about Love, Death, and Robots, Zima Blue, and then When the Yogurt Took Over, we're going to talk about Matriculated from the Animatrix, also Beyond from the Animatrix, and then Second Renaissance 1 and 2 from the Animatrix, and then Raka by Neill Blomkamp, which we touched on in the Blomkamp episode, and then we're going to wrap it up with Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams, the episode titled Human Is with Bryan Cranston.
Cool.
Chad, go.
I just set some homework for everybody to read Zima Blue, the short story, which I presume you guys hadn't read before.
I had not.
What's funny is when we were talking about that way back, I reread it, and then I ended up watching the short.
Nice.
So I did it a while ago, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I did both. I enjoyed doing both.
Yeah, for sure. I encountered this short story randomly when I was hiking. I was like staying at a hiker hostel, and there was just like a sci-fi anthology book, and stumbled across the story by Alastair Reynolds, who's one of my favorite sci-fi authors, who I think you introduced me to, Benny, back in the day.
Yeah, I probably did. The Revelation Space series, yeah.
Yeah. If anyone here likes reading sci-fi stuff and hasn't heard of or read Revelation Space or Alastair Reynolds, I'd highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
I read that based on Ben's recommendation, and it was great and super weird.
It's definitely weird, but it's great universe building, which is kind of my obsession with sci-fi, is just like a really well-inhabited and well-thought-out weird universe.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyways, I ran into this short story back in the day at a hiker hostel and loved it so much that I like cut it out of the book, put duct tape on the binding, and like stuck it in my backpack and hiked with it for the next 5 months and read it repeatedly. So
wow.
I was pretty surprised when I heard that it was being made into a short film, and I wasn't super stoked with the fact that they ended up cutting half of it out in order to fit some arbitrary time deadline, but
yeah,
it was interesting to see it in animated form. Yeah,
I really enjoyed the story of Zima Blue, and I was grossly disappointed in the animated short.
Yeah, sorry.
that I watched right afterward. No, you don't need to apologize. Whoever made that should apologize, because they really just butchered the story. Like the part of what's great about the story is the detail in the story. Really, any story is the detail in the story. And, you know, all the intricacies about that conversation that they have, you know, while they're sitting before he shows her the swimming pool is really great in the story. And then, you know, you watch the animated short, it's almost like a montage, you know, like straight from the 80s, man. You know, he's like, and then I did this, and then I did that, and there was a little girl, you know, and it's like, yeah, no.
I feel like if people watched it and had never heard of the short, they probably, I think there is a lot of love for it as an episode in this series, but I felt like it was worth reading just because it is a case where the book's better than the movie, so to speak. And it's like a 15-minute read or something like that, so it's well worth giving it a shot.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a slower reader, Chad, so it wasn't 15 minutes. Sorry.
It's all good.
I would like to say as an animated short, so it's interesting to talk about this, the Zima Blue contrast between the story and the animated short. Like, as an animated short, it's very cool in terms of animation and visual style. Like, you know, the opening was her on the boat, which was not exactly like the story, but it grabbed me immediately visually. Like, I'm a hyper visual person, and I love, like, any kind of visual eye candy just makes my brain crackle, like snap, crackle, and pop. And it really grabbed me and yanked me right in. The voiceover work was great, but the visuals themselves, which is really the main part of why I watch, you know, animated shorts and animation in general, really was great, I thought. And I really liked the way that all of the animation was done in Zima Blue. I just wish they had made it match the actual story better.
Yeah. So entering spoiler territory, just a super quick synopsis. It's a story of an artist who becomes interstellarly famous for his paintings, one of which ends up with a small square of what ends up being called Zima Blue, which then grows bigger and bigger with each successive work that he does, to the point where he creates like planet-sized blue murals. And the story's about a journalist who goes to interview him before his grand finale. And the grand finale is that he was, in a former life, a pool cleaner robot that was made by a nerdburger in Silicon Valley who over time did experiments on him and turned him into a sentient pool cleaner. So it's kind of an interesting M. Night Shyamalan style twist, which the short story is a lot better at kind of delivering, and the short animated movie is decent, but well worth a check out.
Definitely. I mean, the really big reveal for me at the end was that I loved how the pool tiles were the Zima Blue color, and that he was diving into a pool filled with I can't even say it without laughing. Shit.
Can I give you a little help here?
Yeah, the build-up was really good there too. Go ahead, Ben.
The pool was filled with Zima.
I was like, where the fuck are you going with this?
I was trying to make it good, man. So.
You've been saving that joke for an entire week, and you couldn't deliver.
No, I actually just cried. I just ground that one up right now. I couldn't hold it together. It must be the time of the day. I have no idea. Oh my god!
The real surprise twist ending is that they still have Zima that far flung into the future.
And it was the Zima inside of his circuitry that actually killed him, because he's waterproof. He's not Zima proof.
No, it wasn't the Zima in the circuitry that killed him. It was the Zima that sparked his sentience originally, a la a radioactive spider. So he got his superpowers from Zima.
Oh.
And that's it, folks.
And
Thank you.
That's it. We'll see you next week on the podcast. Oh my god.
It's not going to get any better than that.
It really isn't, man.
But I'm curious about the big reveal. The first time you guys encountered the big reveal, how did it hit you? Was it like oh, that's interesting, or was it like a holy shit? Because for me, it was just like that's genius, and I cut it out of the book and carved the author's name into my inner thigh kind of thing.
I agree. It was like that for me too. I just thought it was great. You know, I didn't see it coming. You know, it's not that it was. I mean, that sort of device has been used before, but you know, clearly he's the originator or one of the originators. And it was a great reveal. I loved it.
Yeah, I think it was really good. Great reveal. Yeah. But the one thing they don't talk about in this short film is the other half of the story, which is really sort of a reflection of what's going on with Zima. There's a reporter who gets an interview with Zima finally, but she's not allowed to take this like device with her that records all of her memory because people at this point in time are quite long-lived. So they have like supplemental device recording your memory, and it sort of like just helps you along through life. You know, like if you're at a party and somebody's like, "Oh, would you like white or red wine?" It'll give you a suggestion, and it's like always right because it knows you so well.
Right.
So the fact that there's something to it that in the actual short story that he asks her to not bring that in because he's trying to make a point about, you know, what it is to be human and memory and, you know, what life is, how you color your memories and how that changes life in general. So that's the part that the short film completely misses. Like they just completely ignore that part of the story. And it kind of ruins it because that's, you know, there's like a balance between Zima returning to the pool and her sort of deciding whether or not to continue without that device.
And really the most important part of the story, like that's what I meant by the intricacies of the conversation before they go to the swimming pool. It's like, you're talking about objective memory versus subjective memory. You know, like the AM it's outside of you. And when he's making this huge case for neural implants, which integrate with your biological memory, you know, and he's like, so it's part of
and like degrade like memories do, etc.
Exactly. So it's like, you know, it's part of the experience, you know, whereas the AM is like, it's an outside observer, you know, it's an outside recorder. So it's never the same thing, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things I liked most about it from just like as a storytelling device was the idea of like the audience at the pool not getting it. And so it like really captured that like famous artist. No one really understands what the hell's going on. They're just kind of baffled by the whole thing. And so her being brought in to be taught a lesson, which kind of helps her to understand the whole thing, was such a core component of the story. It was an odd thing to cut out.
No, it was a totally odd thing to cut out. It's like sort of the essence of the story. I mean, most science fiction stories are really mirroring and talking about the human condition in some way, shape, or form. And it's like, this is a literally, pun intended, perfect example of that. And they like completely eviscerated the story in the animated short. Like, that's why I made my comment about the animate, like sort of talking about it, just the animation earlier, because you have to. Because if you don't, there's really not a lot left there, man. Like, it's just a montage.
Yeah, and the punchline doesn't have the same gravity.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have the same gravity at all. It's like, she's like, oh, I'm going to see Zima Blue, and it's so cool. And it's like, you miss so many layers of detail with the AM and the whole thing, and like the, you know, Zima being so mysterious and her describing, you know, him and all of the, you know, the various different things that he's done, you know, change his body and all of that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I saw an interview with the people that did it, and they were saying that they had like an 8 or 9 minute deadline in terms of like maximum length. So it was kind of like they were forced to cut a lot of stuff out. So I have some sympathy, but at the same time, the creators, like, you know, the people that produced the series, putting an artificial deadline on a series that has no time limit. I mean, maybe it was budgetary, but it just seems like a strange thing to do.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they really nailed the color. How about you?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was how I envisioned it being.
Yeah, that's how I envisioned it as well.
Yeah, it was exactly how I envisioned the color too, for sure. I liked it in the short story where she was saying like she held up his business card, which was Zima Blue, to the sky, and she's like, I couldn't tell if it was the sky color or the ocean color, and I thought that was a great descriptor.
I know. And not only that, but they made it sound like it was, you know, scientifically engineered with all sorts of algorithms and all these different things, and it was like this its own special color, and like, you know, it just turns out it's just pool tile blue.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so great, man.
That's a perfect segue to my kind of final thought, which was I just love the idea of this, you know, quote unquote legendary artist who has this itch that he can't figure out how to scratch, and it's just like this color gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and he's making planet-sized murals, trying to dig into his psyche and figure out what the hell is this itch. And I think it was a really mind-blowing way to explore the idea of like what a fucking pool cleaning robot would actually be thinking if it was sentient. You know, like it's fascinating to have like an interplanetary gigantic mural be the thing that kind of fills the void of just floating around cleaning fucking flies off a pool.
Wow, you really just blew my mind there. Yeah, that was great.
Well, he's just trying to go home the entire time, you know. His memory from when he was like when he first came online or whatever is just living in this universe of that color, and that's all there was, you know. So it's like he's trying to get back there the entire time. It's really interesting.
Yeah. Like you said, Kev, it's a style of twist that's used a lot, but I think the simplicity of the pool robot and the Zima blue color is just a beautiful use case of that type of twist.
Oh my God, yeah, totally.
I just have like one more quick thing to add before we move on. For fans of Alastair Reynolds, there's also a short in Love, Death, and Robots, and it is Beyond the Aquila Rift, which is also based on a short story by Alastair Reynolds, and we opted not to talk about it this time, but maybe we'll talk about it another time.
Oh, nice. Did that...
That one's worth a read before a watch, too, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Oh, wow. I want to do that this week. I'm excited.
Yeah, and if you're interested in Alastair Reynolds, Revelation Space is a trilogy, and a lot of his other books take place in the Revelation Space universe, but if a trilogy is a little bit too big of a commitment, then The Prefect is a good starting point for his writing style as well.
He's also got a lot of books of short stories. I know, Chad, you found yours copy in an anthology, but he actually has a book full of his short stories called Zima Blue, and that has a lot of great short stories in it. And then I think he has a couple more, but the one that's popping into my head is Diamond
Days?
Diamond Dogs and Turquoise Days.
That's
is
it.
Really good.
Yeah.
And that's another one that's full of short stories. So if you're not into if you're into the brevity thing, that's for you.
No, I'll check that out for sure. When the Yogurt Took Over.
Yeah, I just chucked this one in because I thought it was funny, and it gave me a chuckle.
It's goofy. It's definitely a funny one.
I don't have a lot to say on it. You know, it's voiced by Brain from Pinky and the Brain, which I enjoyed a lot.
Yes, I enjoyed that as well. I didn't realize that that's who it was until you put that in that note earlier.
But it's like a funny kind of piss take on, you know, Terminator, Skynet, Matrix, kind of when the robots take over, but it ain't robots. It's a fucking cup of yogurt, which is hilarious.
Absolutely. And I also like that it's, I mean, to me, the thing that jumped out was like just the simple fact of something as completely simple and basic like that taking over the world and the human race, you know, which sort of like, you know, comments on how pathetic the human race is.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was a good kind of satirical take on the singularity AI taking over story that we all know and love, and perhaps is a little overdone these days, but it was an interesting way to throw it together and definitely funny.
I think if it was like 20 minutes instead of 6 minutes, I would probably be hating the hell out of it, but the fact that it was so short and sweet, no pun intended, was just great.
Yeah, I liked the format was good and the length was good as well. I agree with you, Chad.
And the animation too, like this animation choice was like really stupid animation, which like was perfectly fitting.
Yeah, I thought it was as well. I really liked it.
I didn't realize it, but it's based on a short story by John Scalzi, who was the author of Old Man's War, amongst other things, which was an interesting discovery when I was reading up on it today.
I'm not familiar with that work or that author, but
oh yeah, I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me because John Scalzi has a pretty good sense of humor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of funny stuff in his stories, so and sort of, you know, satirical. Satirical is not the word I'm looking for, but you guys know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. I don't have much more to say on this, so for the sake of closure, just a brief synopsis. It's scientists working on yogurt and end up making it sentient, and it negotiates with stupidity in the Oval Office to take over Ohio and solve the global financial crisis. Which is it was a really funny little scene where it's like, here's the solution to the national debt. You have to do it exactly as planned. And the president's like, yeah, of course we will. And you know, all these politicians are going to do something stupid or something wrong. And then it cuts to like the end of, society and destitution. It's just really funny.
Except for Ohio. Which is the best part.
And then they take over the world and get bored a la Scarlett Johansson and Her and launch into orbit in giant yogurt cups. Like, it's just a fucking hilarious short.
I love that. I know. I love that. Oh, man. Good stuff. A really good piss take on the genre in general.
The reason, if we're finishing up talking, do you have anything else to say about yogurt?
I don't. I think
Nope.
I just recommend everybody watch it. It's 6 minutes of your life. You can't go wrong.
I put When the Yogurt Took Over ahead of Animatrix because I thought it's a perfect segue.
Absolutely. I agree.
In the sense that it's essentially like a rival meets the Matrix. So it's just like a perfect, shitty, silly version of what the Matrix was trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. No, totally. Especially the second Renaissance 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It's like the same story. Just in shorter 6-minute form with yogurt. Yeah.
Next stop for us is Animatrix.
Oh man, Ben, do you want to start off talking about Matriculated?
Yeah, sure. This was one that I suggested. I've always been a huge fan of Peter Chung's work.
Love Peter Chung.
I think he's a great animator. All the Aeon Flux stuff is great. He even did an animated short for one of our favorite movies, Kev, The Chronicles of Riddick.
Ooh.
Oh, that's right, Dark Fury. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
So yeah, I really love this one. I think it's just so trippy,
Yes.
And
it's very Peter Chung.
it's very Peter Chung. What else can you say? What do you guys think?
Yeah, similar. I remember watching it when the Animatrix came out, and I wasn't really struck by it as much at the time, probably because of my anticipation for the second and third movies, which weren't out yet. So I was much more in the second Renaissance kind of headspace. But I've always been a huge fan of Peter Chung, and watching it now, a decade plus later, I definitely have an appreciation for it, and it was definitely trippy. It was an interesting idea of flipping the Sentinels and other robots.
Brilliant idea. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, and I love the way that they do it too. Like it's like they bring, I guess we're already getting into a little bit of spoiler territory here, but there's a group of people living on the surface in the world of the Matrix, and they're capturing Sentinels. And what they do is they hook them up and they bring them into this dreamscape, sort of like their human dreamscape, and try to essentially, I guess, convince the robot that it's one of them, so that the robot goes out and fights. So that's where it gets really trippy. Is you have this sentient machine that's like sort of being changed by these people by using this sort of like shared dream space. Really cool stuff.
I also thought like, okay, so yeah, that's exactly right. But I want to add to that. I think that it's also that they are teaching the robots, and it could be that I read this somewhere and it just sort of seeped into my brain, but they were teaching the robots about love and empathy. So like truly the opposite of what the robots do. You know what I mean? Like they plug everybody in. It's very mechanical. It's all about using humans as a power source. And it's like they were taking the robots and showing them what love and empathy was all about, essentially making them more human as opposed to making humans more robotic. So it was like almost the literal opposite. And then also, through that, they, turning them to fight against the machines themselves. And I was drawn into this one. Like, I wasn't interested in it. Like Chad said, I kind of was like, I had played the game, like the movie came out, and then I played the game, which was great. And this came out, and I was really more interested in unearthing like more of the backstory about the Matrix and anything related to the direct story of the Matrix. And this one jumped out at me because it was Peter Chung. Like I had watched Aeon Flux on Liquid Television on MTV, and I was super into that. He's just great. His animation style is so cool. Yeah, the way the characters move in Aeon Flux, like just in anything that he does, is just really, really great. So that's what drew me into it. And I'm glad that did happen, because I think I probably would have brushed it to the side otherwise. And now rewatching it, I feel the same way. Like it's such a great story.
Yeah, for sure.
flipping the whole thing on its head, and really it's the most unique story in all of the Animatrix stories. You know, it's like it just inhabits its own little corner, and it's very cool.
Yeah, it has sprinklings of Aeon Flux, and just to be clear, so that people don't write me like, "What the hell are you thinking about?" on Twitter. Aeon Flux is a masterpiece in the sense of the non-speaking liquid television shorts only. The series afterwards and the movie afterwards can just,
No.
eat a bag. But
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, Peter Chung's style is so unique to him in terms of the visuals, and also like, hypersexuality, kind of orgiastic, undertones, or I mean, they're not even undertones, they're like overtones. But it was interesting to see the Matrix world combined with like an Aeon Flux style.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he came up with his own designs for the Sentinels. That,
Yes.
you never saw in any of the movies. So
The runners, yeah.
I thought that was really cool.
I thought that was neat too, man.
And the idea of, I think, like, one of the more unique ideas, which I think you were touching on a second ago, Kev, was in the Matrix films, they're computer hackers that hack out of the Matrix. And it's all about, like, brute force hacking and brute force gunfighting and et cetera, et cetera. And in this case, it's like they're not hacking these machines. They're going into them and trying to convince them to be good. And it, like, you could imagine exactly the same short film with pretty much the same content, where instead of running into a orgiastic dreamscape to convince the machine to join their team, they just like type a bunch of shit in the keyboard and it turns from red lights to green lights and goes out and fights a million things. But I think that additional stuff really added a great layer to it.
Right, but they're also teaching them as well. Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of unique ideas in the Matrix universe, your other recommendation, Benny, was another really unique episode.
Yeah.
Wow, nice segue, Chad. Really nice segue.
Hey, man, I ride that motherfucker all over town.
Yeah, you really are, man.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you guys talk about this because I was much less interested in the first and second Renaissance and the more directly related stuff. I liked the stuff that was a little more to the outside and like peripheral stories, if you will. So here we go. Yeah, Beyond. I love that one. Like, there's something about that one that it's just delightful and comforting, like the art style, the story, the kids, the whole thing is kind of, after you've like been assaulted by the first and second Renaissance, and then you watch that, it's like, it's just such a different kind of a story. It's just so whimsical and just beautifully done.
Whimsical is a good word.
It is a good word.
They sort of take a concept that was explored in the films, and then they take it and they put it in a different corner of the universe. The concept being a glitch in the Matrix. So the very first glitch we saw was when Neo sees the black cat twice in the movie. And This is essentially the same thing. It's like a crack in the Matrix, and it's making all of the disassociated algorithms are making all of the laws of physical reality completely different in this one area. And it's just so cool.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the ones that struck me quite strongly when I was first introduced to the Animatrix back in the day. So I'm with you, Ben, all the way. It was one of the better ones for sure. And the playfulness of it was really fantastic. And I just like the idea of kind of like a day in the life where to a teenager, 20-something girl loses her cat and stumbles on some neighborhood kids that take her to this place that is the glitch of the Matrix, and the hilarity and silly stuff that they do that has no real plot value, but like is just a visual and kind of like experiential delight. It's definitely a really special short film, which stands really well on its own.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that the kids just, it seems like the kids have discovered this place, and that they're just, the longer they've been there, the more they've figured out that they can do, and they're just, it's like they're exploring this sort of haunted house, playground kind of thing. Really just in the animation style, it's just so beautifully done. Like, I just remember there's this one shot where it's like almost like a fisheye lens kind of thing. And the cat sort of does like, the whole thing is she's looking for her cat, but the cat kind of comes into the frame of the camera and like turns around and like walks away again. But it's it's really interesting animation that they decided to sort of go with this shot that looks like they used a fisheye lens, you know?
Yes, very cool. And also, I want to go back to you said at the beginning, Ben, that this is a very comforting story in a lot of different ways. And I think part of that for me was the kids being such a huge part of the story. Like for us anyway, I can't speak to the kids today, but going around and exploring where you live and finding cool places like that. Like I think that's such a part of being a kid and watching them.
It sure was for me.
Yeah, for me too. And watching them have fun, finding all these cool, interesting, different things going on there. I mean, my God, if I found that sort of thing as a kid, I'd be flipping my lid. I'd be there like every single day. I'm like, that's just so cool. So that was part of the comfort for me. Yes, the animation style is comforting as well, as this animator worked on a classic of animation, which I'm sure we're going to end up talking about in the future, which is Akira. So,
yeah, it was interesting that he was an animator in Akira. Well, I suppose if he was an animator and not like a creator of Akira, it would be why the visual style was a little bit different. Because the kids, especially in this one, really reminded me of the animation style of the Gorillaz characters from the band.
Yes, it did. That's right.
I'm just going to see if Jimmy Google can see who did the Gorillaz.
Dude, Jimmy Google is asleep at this hour.
Oh, wow. Jamie Hewlett, the creator of Tank Girl, was the animator or creator of the Gorillaz stuff. So it's a really interesting and similar style. That just when I was rewatching it, it just jumped out at me as a kind of a similar flavor to that style.
Yeah, but that's sort of like I hate to say this, and I could be wrong, but in my brain, like that's a very Japanese looking style of
yeah, fair.
animation / artwork. So I'm not surprised that the two look similar,
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the second Renaissance, part 1 and 2.
Yeah, let me take point on that one. I'm not sure how you guys were introduced to Animatrix back in the day, but for me, I was me and friend of the show Sam King and also friend of the show Brian Leonard were all in a construction company. Like we started a construction company and we were like roofing houses and just like, normal building stuff. And we're obsessed, like completely obsessed with the Matrix and the upcoming films. And we just talk about it all day, every day, basically. And somebody found that the Animatrix was coming out, and the way that it was being released was 4 of the episodes were going to be released on the web, 1 a week. So the delay between watching them was a really powerful kind of thing, where you just like watch the 1 episode like 15 times kind of thing, Did you guys have that same interaction, or were you more when it released on DVD?
I randomly found it on DVD, and I was ecstatic when I did find it. And I don't remember what order that came in, like if it was after The Matrix, after Enter the Matrix, or after Matrix Reloaded.
Yeah, it was between Matrix 1 and Matrix 2. So it was like a hype machine to get people hyped up for the second Matrix film.
Right. No, I just don't remember where I found it. If I found it before I played the game, or if it was right after the movie or what. But I remember finding it and being like, wow, this is super cool, man. Especially Flight of the Osiris, because again, like directly related to the story, I didn't appreciate the outlier stories until later.
Yeah, and Flight of the Osiris was evidently like shown in cinemas in front of the movie Dreamcatcher. So it was like they paid for it to be released as kind of like a short film before a theatrical release. So there were the 4 episodes released on the web 1 week at a time, and then Flight of the Osiris was in theaters, and then it led up to the release of the second film. So for me, Second Renaissance being one of the 4 episodes, or 2 of the 4 episodes, I suppose, really made it like a special viewing for me, because like, you watch the first one, Second Renaissance Part 1, and we would stop construction and like at lunch we'd go and like, watch the thing over and over at Brian's house and like eat lunch. You know what I mean? So it was like, it was an interesting time kind of in the internet and kind of the way media was released, and similar to how Beyond was like exploring similar spaces to how we used to go and play out in the woods and stuff. Like from what I understand, kids these days don't get out into the woods and and explore like we had the luxury of. And similarly, Second Renaissance, like weekly web release, random, pre-internet style, or kind of pre-social media, maybe is a better way, pre-social media style of releases and information. It was a super interesting way for them to generate hype for the Matrix films.
Absolutely. And showing how they got to where they were in the world of the Matrix was perfect. I mean, it's just backstory.
Yeah. And I know that you're more of a fan of the second and third films than I am, but for me, I kind of prefer the Second Renaissance 1 and 2 short films to the second and third films. Like I'd almost rather have Matrix 1 and the Second Renaissance shorts and then be done with the whole thing. Which I realize is a bit of a curmudgeonly thing to say, but I really have a lot of admiration for what they were able to accomplish in like 2 5-minute videos.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Chad. I'm really not so into the second and third movies. When the second one came out, I think I was kind of, I don't know, just psyched that there was a new Matrix movie out more than I actually enjoyed the film. And it wasn't until later that I was like, I kind of don't know if I like this all that much. And then by the time the third one came out, I was just not as interested. So these shorts, I think I agree, are a little higher quality storytelling than that, even though they're short. They're really, really well done. And as far as how I was introduced to the Animatrix, I think I was, I wasn't working with you and those guys, but, we definitely hung out a fair amount. And I remember hearing about it. I think I wanted to check it out online, but at that time, like I just had a shit internet connection or something, and it was like painfully slow to like get it to download or just stream. So I didn't really watch them until I got my hands on a DVD somewhere. I don't remember where, but
yeah, I think, one of the things I appreciate most about Second Renaissance is like, even though it was too short, 5-minute shorts or whatever, or 8-minute shorts or however long they are, there's some really powerful stuff in there. I specifically remembered in the first episode where the humans are destroying all the robots, and there's this like woman being like pushed around and beat up by a group of dudes in the street, and it turns out she's a robot and gets like, she's partially nude from the assault and then gets a sledgehammer to the head, and it's just the last thing is her being like, I'm real. It's just like, holy shit, man. There's some just super heavy stuff in there, and I think it was really effective and really powerful.
Yeah.
Oh, it was really heavy, dude. Yeah, no, the blood and guts, and I mean that metaphorically and literally, are very in your face in those two stories. They do not pull any punches in showing like the horribleness of the human race and how they got the robots to where they were. And when you watch it, you're almost like, I get it. You deserved it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, we did it to ourselves.
Exactly right. Especially
nowadays, with the political climate the way it is globally, with just the amount of ridiculousness, Brexit or whatever, just all of these decisions that are being made around the world where you're just scratching your head as to how people and societies have gotten themselves into these positions. It sheds a totally different light on the, like, I know how we'll kill the robots. Let's darken the sky for eternity, because like in 2003, when you see it, you're like, okay, I guess I could see how dumb, humanity would be. But now it's just like totally plausible, like I could totally see a group of politicians or whatever making that decision on our behalf.
Well, I think the current equivalent of that, and I really do not want to spend any time on it, I think it's a great comparison though, is like I read a headline rather of an article. I think the title was something to the effect of, what are we going to do about colonizing Mars? And I'm like, colonizing Mars? Are you kidding me? Why don't we spend some time trying to make sure everybody's got something to eat and healing the planet and about a zillion other things before we just be like, we already burned this one out. Let's go to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole ignoring global warming thing is an interesting...
Exactly, man.
Interesting corollary.
Right. It's like, let's just make the skies dark and then it won't matter. And it's like, wait, Yeah. Come on. Just utter stupidity.
Well, so often in these movies, like Terminator, it's like, oopsie, we made a robot that takes over the world. Tee-hee. And this one, it's just like, the robots come to humans in the United Nations are like, we want to live side by side, and we're like, fuck you guys, and then just like nuke them from orbit, and
which really kind of like they keep like kind of hitting you in the face with the fact that the human race is so stupid, because once 01 comes into existence and they're like, oh, we want to live peacefully, they were like, yeah, no way, and they keep trying and we keep saying no, like
xenophobia and stuff.
We created you. Yeah, it's so indicative of like the way we are as a group sometimes.
Yeah, most of the time. It's crazy. It was just like a really powerful short film, and really just like was a gut punch at the time, and got me so hyped for the movies that unfortunately I didn't hit home for me, but great short. Let's go to Raka by Neill Blomkamp. Raka. We talked about this in the Blomkamp episode. Chad suggested that we watch this. My favorite part about talking about this in the Neill Blomkamp episode was you and I spoke about it for like 2 minutes, and then Ben, we're like, oh, what do you think, Ben? Maybe we should move on because you haven't seen it. And Ben's like, yeah, anything would be better than listening to you two knuckleheads keep talking about this fucking movie. It's one of my favorite moments. That's exactly right. It was actually... No, it was even better than that. What he said. I think it ended up as a sizzle reel in the beginning of the show, but yeah, that was the best part of talking about Rocco, was that comment. It's just like the viciousness with which you were unimpressed with us discussing something you hadn't seen. It was so good. No, I didn't see it. Yeah, anything be better than listening to you two talk about this nerdy, that's what he said, nerdy sci-fi shorts. That's what it was. So we figured we'd bring it back, and make you watch it and suffer through talking about it.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. Now that I've seen it, I'm still not in the Blomkamp.
Now that you've seen it, fuck you guys. Fair enough, man.
Sigourney Weaver could not save it for me.
No.
I think one of the problems that I have with short films, generally speaking, is so often it's either I want them to be a feature-length film, or they're like trying to get funding to become a feature-length film as opposed to just being a short film, So it's kind of difficult sometimes to thread the needle and actually make an effective short. So this is an example of fishing for funding to make a movie as opposed to it being like a short film. But I like the idea.
I like the idea too, but I think it's also difficult. Like if you've got a big idea, it's hard to like figure out what you're going to put into the short. You know what I mean? Like you have to leave so much stuff out. It's like,
tell me about it. I have to fucking cut an hour-long show down to a 30-second ad every week, and I don't have the talent. I'll tell you what, it's fucking hard.
Oh, we know that, dude. I mean that it's hard.
Oh, not that I don't have any talent. I like it.
Hey, folks, syntax is everything and timing is everything.
That's it.
So I already said...
That'll be my death.
There you go, right there. I really like this film. I liked I get why Ben doesn't like it. I mean, I can see why. I just thought the visuals were really good. They really made up a lot of it for me. I like that it just wasn't so cookie cutter in terms of like aliens coming and taking over the world and like all of that. I mean, there was a lot of reused themes there, but I really dug the aliens themselves, and their tech seemed fairly well fleshed out in this 20-minute little film, which I really liked. And the visuals were great. As we said in the Blomkamp episode, Neill Blomkamp started off as a 3D animator, and it shows because he does the 3D animation and the directing on his films, and it's great.
It was a swing and a miss for you, Benny?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Some of the visual effects were cool. It just didn't hit for me. It kind of felt like it played like an extended trailer for a movie that I didn't get to see,
Yep. That's pretty much exactly what it was.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's sort of, it's like the way it glossed over things sort of with a broad stroke was it was just a bit of a bizarre watch, I think. And, it was interesting, but it didn't really resonate with me personally. But also, much like the Batman Joker stuff, you guys have fatigued me of these things now. And unfortunately, I'm probably looking at these. I probably looked at this with a certain lens that,
Sure.
With a certain bias. The bias of, God damn you guys making me watch this fucking stupid short. Just kidding.
And that would be a lens of hatred.
Well, I don't remember which movie it was. Maybe it was when we were talking about The Fifth Element last week, but you mentioned either watching The Fifth Element or watching something similar, where because it was for the show, you were analyzing it instead of enjoying it. And I do think that's a factor, like I do think that doing a show as opposed to just talking in a living room over beers with your buds, it definitely causes you to approach it differently.
Yeah, for certain.
Definitely.
As much as you want the show to just be a natural conversation, like you do end up analyzing things more for sure. Or not you, but I mean like we probably do.
Yeah, I try to keep it conversational. I feel like it's interesting it's more interesting when we're kind of riffing off of if somebody comes up with something interesting and then we're riffing off of that, as opposed to we're being a little meta here. But sometimes I feel like we're all just kind of waiting for our turn to throw our angle out there. Not to be rude to each other, but it's just like you're trying to remember what you wanted to say, and it has a tendency to push the conversation in directions that aren't natural.
Yeah. No, it's true enough.
In the case of this thing, I was just Blomkamped out, man. Like, that's all it was.
Blomkamped out, man.
I think it's a good short to get a little meta on in terms of how we make the show, because it isn't really a short film. It's like you said, it's like a meta trailer. So it's not quite, yeah. The only reason it was on the list is because it was interesting visually, and you bludgeoned Kevin and I to death over it in the episodes. I thought it would be worth, revisiting the beating. We deserved it, to be fair. We did make him watch 3 Neill Blomkamp movies against his will.
Totally.
And then, even more.
And
so,
then the 20-minute short.
At least it wasn't all of the shorts.
Yeah, like all of Oat Studio stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and for the folks at home, if you didn't get this in the Blomkamp episode, go to, what's the name of his studio again, Chad? I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, yeah. Oat Studio. Oat Studio has all of Blomkamp's
a YouTube channel.
The YouTube channel, has all of Blomkamp's sci-fi shorts. There's some really great stuff in there, so check it out. Or some really not great stuff if you're in the Heego camp.
Yeah.
So, all right, folks, we were going to talk about Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams, the episode Human Is, starring Bryan Cranston, but we are out of time this week on the podcast. That's right. We don't have our usual 4.5 hours to sit here and grind on about stuff. So we're going to throw that segment into another episode, possibly the beginning, or shoehorn it back into this one. And we're going to have to wrap it up for now. I really enjoyed talking about these sci-fi shorts, these animated shorts. I thought it was a great little departure, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, if you have any random shorts that you think we should watch and maybe talk about alongside Human Is, we'd love to hear from you. Yeah,
we could just get some more material together and do another one of these episodes about shorts if people are digging it.
Why don't we just make this a 2-parter and we'll just release them as a doubleheader back to back?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Let's do Human Is. We can spend some time talking about that, and then whatever you've got. And I'm going to watch Love, Death, and Robots. I'm going to try to watch more of them and see if any of those jump out at me, and I'll throw it into the mix.
Yeah, that Aquila Rift one that Ben was talking about.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect, man. That sounds really, really cool. Folks, as Chad said, we're going to continue talking about animated shorts next week. So please tune in for that. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on another time.
Love you long time.
Latris on the Menjay.
And that's going to wrap up this week's episode. Next week, we're going to be talking about more sci-fi shorts, as we enjoyed doing it so much this week. You can find the show notes for today's episode in your podcast app of choice, or at our website, ebd.fm/episodes/29. You can shoot us questions using the Twitter hashtag AskEBD. You can find me at Molverine on Twitter. That's MOHLVERINE. Chad is at Chad Normal on Twitter. Ben is at Heego on Twitter. That's JARHEEGO. I'd like to take a minute and thank you all so much for tuning into the show. It really means so much to me and the boys. If you'd like to support the show, there are 2 great ways you can do it. First, by rating and reviewing us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast widgets. Or you can tell someone to check out the show. Word of mouth is incredibly powerful and incredibly effective. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.